So, my presentation today is pitch your graphic novel like a pro. Okay, I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to pay attention to the chat as I go. So, if you have questions as I'm going along, just put them in the chat and, my whole team here, where everybody's going to be paying attention to that. And when we get to the end, we will definitely be answering questions. Okay, so who am I? I already introduced myself briefly, but just in case you came in a little bit late, I am Janna Morishima. I'm the founder of Kids Comics Unite, and I'm also a literary agent who specializes in graphic novels. I've been working in graphic novels for a super long time, since around 2002 or something like that. I started at Scholastic, and I was one of the founding editors of Scholastic Graphics. So those are that's why you should trust me. I've been doing this for a long time. All right, so what we are going to cover today, we're going to talk about what agents and editors are really looking for. And I have an acronym called SUM, and I'm going to explain that to you in this presentation. And then we're going to talk about the XP bonus that you should be striving for, which is and I'm going to explain that also. And then we're going to talk about how pitching a graphic novel is different from a picture book and why your pitch is like a Swiss Army knife and how to boil down a full pitch for the KCU Pitchfest competition, which I will be talking about at the end. So let's get started. All you need when you're working on your pitch is one acronym, and that is SUM. And what does SUM stand for? It stands for S, story, U stands for you, and then M stands for the market. So your pitch, if you had to boil the whole thing down into like what are the key pillars of your pitch, it is what is the story that you're telling? Who are you as the creator? And what is the market that you're targeting? What is the target audience of your book and what's sort of out there for that target audience? So now I'm going to talk about each of those three elements one at a time, starting with the story. So as an agent, or if I were an editor, if I was an editor, the questions that I'm going to be asking, the first ones I'm going to ask when I'm looking at a pitch are, am I captivated by it? Am I emotionally compelled by this story? So we want to be drawn in right away. That's why I generally recommend that when you put together your pitch, in terms of the order of how things are organized, number one, you have your cover image, and that's just a very, very simple image with a title and your name as the creator or as the creative team. And then the very next slide is what I would call the project summary, which is just a single page that says, what's the age level, what's the log line, maybe a very short synopsis. In one page, what is this thing? And then right after that, the sample art. Don't, in general, I would say don't put the detailed synopsis before the sample art. And the reason for that is because I've heard from many editors, and I know this is true for myself as well. I skip to wherever the sample art is. No matter what's in the pitch, I skip to the sample art first because that's the piece that's most important. If I read the sample art and I'm not fully convinced by it, no matter how amazing your detailed synopsis is or everything else in your pitch, you haven't passed the first hurdle. So that's why the sample art is so important. So I want to show you some examples. So this is a pitch that my client Joe Latham created for his middle grade trilogy called Haru. This was what the cover image looked like, and it's actually, I think, almost identical to what the cover of his book ended up being. In some cases, that does happen. In a lot of cases, it doesn't happen. You don't have to try to design the cover of your book when you're putting together a pitch, but you do need to try to create a cover image that grabs attention. And then this is the summary page, which has the title. It says it's a 3-book series. Each book is 200 to 240 page long. And then it has a short synopsis of what the story is. And then it goes right into the sample art. And as you can see, this, I'm just going to show you one spread from the inside of the pitch. He had a number of spreads, but I mean, the color palette, the atmosphere, the character designs, like everything about this really pulls you in. And you can tell this has a very strong um, visual voice, I would say. So we want to feel something immediately. And that feeling could be very diverse depending on what type of a story you're telling. So it could be we're curious because your story is nonfiction and maybe you're talking about something really unusual. We want to laugh maybe if it's funny. For sure, if you're doing a humor graphic novel, your sample pages need to make us laugh. Or maybe they make us like at the edge of our seats. It's suspense, and you end on a cliffhanger with your sample art. So we want to feel something. And so this is an example from another client of mine, Shauna Grant. This was the pitch that she ultimately sold to Scholastic for her Mimi series, which is an early reader graphic novel series about a little girl named Mimi and her pet, or it's not her pet, it's her stuffed animal named Penelope. And you can tell right away, it's like super duper duper cute and fun, and the main character just looks adorable, and you know right away what the tone of this story is. And so this was the summary page from her pitch. In this case, she talked about what the format is. She had a short synopsis, and she had really short um, character descriptions for each of the main characters. And then this is one example of the sample art that she put in the pitch. And I don't remember exactly how many pages it was. It was maybe like 8 or 10 pages of sample art in the pitch. Okay, we also want to see a strong concept that has a voice. We look at your pages and we feel like I I haven't seen something exactly like this before. I really love the way that this creator is telling this story. So here's an example from a pitch by Andy Hirsch that we sold to Little Brown Ink last year. This is called Keene Street Pet Detectives. This was the cover image of the pitch. And then when you go in, again, the summary page, it has title, author, short description of what it is, and then it has some information about the format because this book is all about puzzles. It's a mystery series, and every few pages within this graphic novel, there's a riddle to be solved of all different types. And so because that was such an important aspect of this particular pitch, he put that right on the summary page. And then something cool that he did on right before he went into the sample art, he had this kind of like heading page, and it's just a humorous little vignette with the three main characters. You kind of get a sense of each of their personalities, and the character on the right is saying, "Ah, my lucky quarter! Everything must be lost in the upcoming sample pages." So I think that's really creative. Like, with your pitch, think about how you can make it fun for the agent or the editor to be reading the pitch itself. And he did that with the way he's introducing, like, after you turn this page, you are going to see the sample pages. And so this was the first page from the sample art that he included in his pitch. And then finally, of course, your pitch should make us want to say, I want to read this right now. We don't want to wait. So this is an example from Gibson and Rory from their Wuthering Heights pitch. And it's absolutely gorgeous. As you can see, the cover image is on the left, and then I just have a little vignette from the cover. Then they had their synopsis page, the summary page from the beginning, with a slightly longer short synopsis, 4 paragraphs. This is a book that's aimed for YA readers, so it's a little bit more sophisticated storytelling and a little bit, and the pitch does reflect that. And then right into the sample art. I mean, doesn't this make you want to read this book? So that should be the feeling that you are giving agents and editors. Okay, now switching gears, the second thing that your pitch needs to do is it needs to tell us about who you are as a human being. And it could be that you're a debut creator. It could be that you're a very experienced creator with backlist. It could be that you used to be a teacher or you're still a teacher. It could be that you have two kids who are happen to be in at the age level of the pitch that you're creating. Like literally anything about your personal life that is somehow relevant to the pitch you're creating, you should have that in your pitch because we want to have a pretty well-rounded sense of who you are. So, we we want your pitch to reflect that you are interesting and likable in some way. So I'm going to show you a particular pitch for an illustrated graphic novel. I'm sorry, illustrated nonfiction graphic novel by Lindsay Lee. She actually did three books in this series. The first one was called The Deep. And so that was the cover image. And I'm not going to show you the whole pitch, but sort of towards the second part of the pitch, she had this about the author slide. And what I think is so cool about this particular page is that Lindsay has a picture of herself as a kid. That's her author photo. And she's inside a museum, standing inside of a shark head. Her parents must have taken this picture of her when they went to an aquarium. And it's just so perfect. It's like the perfect image to put for this specific pitch, right? Because this book is about the deep sea. So anytime you can, think a little bit outside the box like that, you should do it. So the second thing we want to know is that you take your craft seriously. How can you convey that in your pitch? Well, the way that Lindsay did it is that she created this slide in her pitch that was called Getting the Word Out. And she talked about various ways that she's connecting, not with just with comics people, although she does mention that here, but with the scientific community to really research this book and also let them know about it and let them know it's coming. So she was an intern at the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History in scientific illustration. And in order to work on her manuscript, she connected with a bunch of scientists from the Smithsonian, from NOAA, which is, uh, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting somebody who knows what NOAA is. Put the, it's, I'm thinking of like North Atlantic Treaty Association, but that is not what it is. It has to do with oceanography. The O stands for oceanography. And then she connected with some professor at Rutgers, et cetera, et cetera. And then the final thing that we want to get a sense from your pitch is that you're open to feedback, you're collaborative, you're easy to work with. One thing that I recommend to all my clients, and I'm telling you guys here, I recommend that you put a thank you slide at the end of your pitch. Just because it's a nice thing to do. It's polite. And you could put on the slide like, here's my contact information, your email address. You could put your agent's name if you're working with an agent. Just little details like that that make it feel like, first of all, you're appreciative that somebody's looking at your pitch. And second of all, you're making it easy for them to get in touch with you. Okay, so what is one thing that almost all agents and editors will do if they are interested in your pitch? I created this little Giphy here. They are going to Google you. And so you need to ask yourself before you send out that pitch, what are people going to find about me when they Google me? And you should Google yourself and see what comes up on the first page. So, what does come up when you Google yourself? And is it conveying what you want it to? So in the case of Lindsay Lee, I created this slide a while ago. I'm not sure what exactly comes up now, but I'm pretty sure it's quite similar to this. So if you Google Lindsay Lee artist, the first thing that comes up is her website. Yay! That is the first thing that you want to come up is your own personal website. The second thing that comes up is her page on my website. I'm her agent. Then there comes up another page from her website that's her about page. And then there's her Instagram. And then there's the in-print shop that she has for selling prints of her work. So all of these things are like check, 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 check as an agent or an editor. Like, yes, yes, we see that, you have your website, you have an agent, you have social media, you have a shop. That's really cool that you're putting your work out there in a different way like that. I'm not saying you have to do all those things, but you do want to make sure that when people Google you, they have a way of getting a pretty clear sense of who you are. Okay, so this is what you would find if you clicked on Lindsay's website back when I was originally pitching her. So at that time, she was still an unpublished creator, and so her website was very simple. The menu bar shows what she does. At that time, books, I assume that would have been leading to like books in progress or unpublished work. And then right on the homepage was her portfolio, so you could click into her portfolio. Now, if you go to her website, it looks like this. So her career is evolving, right? Because she now has books under her belt. So when she pitches her next project and people look at her website, they now see, oh, she has all these published books up there. So that's the other thing about your website is that it's not a once and done thing. It's basically always evolving as your career evolves. All right. So we've talked about the story, we've talked about you as the creator, and now we're going to talk about the final part that your pitch is going to address, which is the market. So the question that I, as an agent or editor, am asking is, am I immediately clear who the audience for this book is and how we would sell this book to them? So the first question I would want to know is, who is this book for? What's the age range? What's the category? What shelf does it belong on in the bookstore or in the library? And I should be really, really clear from that, even from within the first two pages of your pitch, because you'd probably put that on your summary page. So I want to show you an example from Home by Leo Keelis. This is another pitch, just some sample pages from it. This was his cover image. Um, and when you go right into the summary page, it says it's a full color, approximately 200 pages, middle grade graphic novel. And then there's a short synopsis. And I just want to draw your attention to the fourth paragraph in this short synopsis. It says, Home is a unique story of acculturation, about loss and redemption, about ties that bind and those that divide. It's about rebuilding and how the current of family and culture pulls us home sometimes when we least expect it. So if you had to kind of guess the tone and the type of book this is, I can't see the chat right now, but you guys can put in the chat what you kind of feeling you get from this. But I will tell you, for me, I'm getting the sense of like literary graphic novel. This is more like a Smile or um, Be Prepared or a book like that. So that's exactly what you want to do. You want to make the editor or agent have a pretty clear sense from that short synopsis what type of book it is. And now you want to talk about why does this book sell to that particular audience? And one of the best ways that you can do this is with your comp titles, because your comp titles are sort of how you situate your book amongst what is already out there in the market. And you're suggesting to the editor and the agent, a reader who really likes these books is probably going to like my book a lot as well. And so you can just see from the titles right here that Leo is really clearly putting himself kind of in the graphic novel memoir, middle grade graphic novel memoir space. But the other thing that Leo did in his pitch that I think is really cool is he included this one slide that just says audience market. And these are not so much graphic novels, it's more showing you these are books by Latina creators who are interested in the types of themes that Leo is talking about in his book. So they're not necessarily graphic novels, but they're other types of books that share a vibe and share an audience. And then he has this author's note slide where he really gets a little bit personal about why he cares so much about this story and how it really does stem from his personal experience. So you can see on this slide, he has almost like a little mini essay that's written directly to the editor. And then he's pulled out some images that kind of show like these are not just books that have inspired me, but Broadway shows and comics and like all different kinds of things. So th something like this is really powerful. And one thing I'll say, in terms of feedback that we have gotten from the Pitch Fest jury about our Pitch Fest competitions in past years, repeatedly, one of the things that we hear most often is we really love that one of the things you ask for in your mini pitches is the author why statement. That really does make a difference to people. They really want to know, why are you writing this book? So I'm going to show you a few pages from Maple Lamb's amazing pitch for Monkey King and the World of Myth. So that was her title slide, and then here's her summary page. Um, she just she designed this pitch so beautifully. You can see it has just little pieces of spot art that kind of give you a feeling for the type of story it is, and the characters are so darn cute. But then I'm skipping sort of the middle of the pitch and I'm getting to the end of the pitch where she has this author's note. And I think it's really cool because it's very visual. It just has a few lines of text, but she's really getting her point across. So the first thing she talks about is that the Monkey King myth is extremely popular in China and other countries in Asia. And she shows all these like movie examples of various, different types of media that has been um, put out there about the Monkey King myth. And then she talks about how many stories that I grew up with were influenced by this classic Chinese myth. And these are comics that are mostly comics, I think, that are aimed at kids that draw on that specific mythology. Then she talks about how adaptations and versions of the story show up in pop culture now. And she shows Netflix, she shows Lego. So that's like broadening the scope even more, but also making it more relevant to the here and now in the United States. And then number four, she says it shows up sometimes in American children's books. She mentions American Born Chinese and other books. And then fifth, it's a beloved classic that she specifically wants to put her spin on. So I think with these 5 points, she has really effectively made the case, not that just that she's the right person to be creating this story afresh, but also that there's a lot of interest out there for this particular story. All right, so I have covered now the three main elements: story, you, and the market. So anytime you're reviewing your pitch, you need to be asking yourself, am I getting each of those points home really, really well? Then there is this XP bonus that you can have. And if you have it, you are really going to make people like me or editors sit up in our chair and take notice of you. You're leveling up if you have this. And that is eh. Okay, this is my other acronym. Now, in English, when we see the word we're sort of like, that's how you, you say that phrase, right? But if any of you are anime watchers, you know there's another way that Japanese people say that, which is like, right? And that's the kind of thing that we're talking about. It's like, and that is evidence of hustle. If there is evidence of hustle in your pitch, we are going to like that a lot. So, what do I mean by evidence of hustle? We want to see that you are not just sitting around waiting to be discovered. You are putting yourself out there. I'm sure you've heard me say this phrase so many times that you are sick of me saying it, but it is really, really important. And that's why I say it all the time. So, are you consistently putting yourself out there? So, we love creators who are already connecting with fans. And I know a lot of you think right away social media, but that is not necessarily the only way to be putting yourself out there, nor is it even necessarily the best way to be putting yourself out there. If you're somebody who regularly goes to festivals or cons, that is amazing. If you have a newsletter, that's often way more effective than social media these days. Or if like, oh my God, you have a podcast or you have a YouTube, you have a Patreon, you've done Kickstarters before, that's like, ding, 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 ding. That's really, really great. So keep that in mind with your pitch. And now I want to show you an example from John and Desi St. Amant. Their book, 3B Honey, was picked up by Papercuts last year, but they've been working at this project for a number of years and working really hard at it. And I want to show you how many different ways that they have been putting themselves out there in order to get that book deal, which did take quite a while to happen. So, first of all, they have their pitch for the story, right? This is, I believe, the summary page from their pitch. Um, and this is the sample art just so you get a sense of what it looks like. Now, they submitted their pitch in, I believe, 2022 for the very first Pitch Fest competition that we did, and they got third place. Awesome, yay! Unfortunately, they didn't get a book deal in that first year after Pitch Fest happened, but they didn't give up. I didn't give up. We didn't give up. Um, and as you can see, they actually did a crowdfunding campaign for it. They decided to crowdfund, I believe it was like the first two chapters of the book. I think it was a 64-page mini comic, not mini comic, but comic that they published through Crowdfunder. And so because of doing this whole crowdfunding campaign, they had to put all the pieces in place of starting a newsletter, reaching out to everybody they knew to let them know that they had this crowdfunding campaign, trying to connect with podcasters or anything like that. And they were successful. They successfully funded their crowdfunding campaign. And then they didn't stop with that. They continue to put themselves out there. John does videos, a lot of really cool creative process videos. This is from TikTok, but he also posts them on YouTube. And then they have their website and they have a newsletter. So they are really pulling out all the stops. I'm not saying you necessarily have to do all these things. They are two people, they're a married couple. So I think that helps. They can kind of spread the work to some extent. But it's just very impressive, I will say that. And when I did ultimately sell it to Paper Cuts, one of the things that I think won them over is the fact that they're like, wow, this team are really kicking butt in terms of connecting with people. So the other thing that we really love is when we get a sense that you have a mindset of sharing the process and that you understand that this is a long game. Getting a book deal, building a career as an author is not something that happens in 1 year. I mean, any of you here who are published creators, you can put in the chat like how long you feel like it takes, but oh my gosh, years and years and years and years is pretty much almost always the way it works. And so I want to show you an interesting example of that with this particular pitch. This is not for a graphic novel. This is for a picture book. But my client, Claudia Rueda, sold this picture book series to Candlewick, and the first book just came out in December. But I want to show you some really creative things that she did early on in the process that I think are really cool. So first of all, she does have a Substack, and it's called The Mock Turtle. I think that comes from Alice in Wonderland, but it's a reference to classic literature. And she also, simultaneously with starting this newsletter, she started this thing called the Mock Turtle Picture Book Club at a local bookstore in New York City called Sula Luna, which is a bookstore that specializes in illustrated books. And she hosts this book club once a month during the fall and then during the spring. She takes the summer off. And so once a month, she has this event. Anybody's invited to come to it. And at this event, it's sort of like a two-part thing where she starts with a little mini lecture, going with a deep dive into usually one or two children's book creators who she thinks are incredible, basically, in one way or another. She has a theme for every single month. And then, so she does her little mini lecture, kind of analyzing what it is about their work that she feels is so impactful. And then in the second half of the meeting, the group at the bookstore has they divide up into little groups. They have a discussion about the particular themes that she's covered in the lecture. And then everybody comes back together and has a group-wide discussion about the themes. And it's just a really cool format, and people really love it. And she has actually built up this following within New York City of picture book nerds, people who like really want to go down the rabbit hole of like the craft of picture books. And as you can imagine, in New York City, there are quite a number of people like that. And there are some pretty influential people like that as well. People who come to her picture book club. And she put all this together before the book was coming out from Candlewick. So this was really great. She's kind of like setting the stage in a really effective way for her book launch. And so this is just a photo from one of the picture book club meetings. It's in the book in the basement of the bookstore. And then I want to show you, this is from her actual book launch that happened in December when the book came out. One of the really cool details I want to show you here on this slide, on the upper right is an animation producer who happened to come to her book launch and is very interested in her work. So that was pretty darn cool. And on the bottom right image, this is the manager of the bookstore, and you see she's holding this tray of stuff. It's actually little cones with popcorn inside, and each of those cones has a handmade stamp of one of the Smushkins characters that Claudia and her husband put together. So they were giving out popcorn to everybody in the audience. So it just had this like super fun atmosphere at the book launch. And then, you can see like afterwards there was a dinner upstairs in the bookstore. And oh my gosh, one of the people who comes to her picture book club regularly made a little tiny felt plushie of one of her characters and gave it to Claudia as a surprise at this book launch. So this is to show you how, like, she really, she started a year and a half or 2 years before this book came out, kind of laying the groundwork for this. So it's really, really cool. If you think, you have to think kind of strategically like that. And if you do, agents and editors really love you. Okay, so I have a few pieces of advice about hustle. My pieces of advice are that it is better to do one thing well than a bunch of things not so well. So if you feel like, oh my gosh, I have to have a newsletter, I have to have an Instagram, I have to go to shows, I have to do all these things, I would say definitely not, especially if you're beginning. I would pick one of those things, like just do a newsletter or just go to a few shows a year. Just do Instagram, like whatever feels manageable to you and whatever feels like you might enjoy it. I mean, I'm a super extrovert, so like going to shows to me sounds super duper fun. I love doing that. But if you're somebody who's like, that doesn't sound fun to me, maybe a newsletter is better for you. So I want to show you one creator, Mike Dawson. I have shown examples of his work before because I think he is just the coolest guy, and I love the way that he puts himself out into the world. So this is his website. It says Mike Dawson Comics, and I actually just grabbed this screenshot of his website today. It has looked quite different in the past because he has a new book coming out, and he put a slide of his new book right up there on his homepage. I cannot remember what month it's coming out. I think sometime this spring. But very interestingly, he put Charlotte's Web meets Minecraft movie. Talk about a really good log line. Like that really gives you a very good sense of this story. It's quite a hook. And it's pretty cool that he actually put that hook right on his website. Instead of having the cover of the book, he has like the log line, which is really interesting. But more importantly, for this specific topic that I'm talking about right now, I want to show you his newsletter. So this is his Substack, Mike Dawson Comics. And if any of you subscribe to his newsletter, you know that his newsletters are actually comics. So basically, every time he sends out a newsletter, it's like a little short comic essay that's mostly in images. Sometimes there's a few lines of text in between, but mostly you're just reading images of a comic in his Substack. So he has that. Then he also has this Patreon page for people who want to support him even further. He has a tip jar, which is just sort of the bottom level tier of support. Then he has a digital mini comic club. So you're going to get a digital PDF mini comic every month. But what I think is really cool about Mike Dawson is that he has a physical mini comic club. So he will mail you a mini comic every month without fail if you support him at this level. That is amazing. But what I want you to notice is that actually everything he's doing is actually tied together. So it's not like he's doing one thing here and one thing there and one. If you go back, you see up at the top of his website, blog, author visits, zine club. So the blog leads to his Substack, the zine club leads to his Patreon, right? But when he is publishing on his blog, his monthly comic, that's the exact same thing usually, I think. Not maybe not always, but oftentimes that is the zine that he's then putting into zine format, printing out, and putting in the mail to send to his zine club subscribers on Patreon. So he's basically taking one piece of content and he's repurposing it in a really thoughtful way. And then the final thing that I want to mention is that Mike really loves doing author visits. He's amazing at doing school visits because he has this whole format. I've seen him do it multiple times, where he teaches kids how to make their own comic. He even, oh my gosh, I should have brought it to this presentation to show you, but he created a little like activity book that he prints and he gives it to each of the kids in the classroom when he leads this workshop in schools. And every time he sends out his Substack, so you read his comic, which is always really fun to read, and then at the end, he always talks about the school visit that he just did. So he's like, "Oh, I just went to this school and I really loved talking about XYZ with the students." Or once somebody asked me this really funny question. He usually has like a little cool anecdote. So what he's doing with that is he's sort of subconsciously reminding those of us who read his Substack, hey, I do school visits. Hey, I do school visits. Every time you get his newsletter, you get reminded that, right? And he's told me before that he regularly gets school visits from people who just get reminded from his newsletter and they happen to be talking to a teacher or, their kid is in a class and they mention to the teacher, you should really hire this guy to come into the school. So it's all tied together in a really, really smart way. Oh, so this was an example from his most recent school, newsletter. He happened to mention that he got a flat tire and had to reschedule his most recent school visit. So that's an example of it's really simple. It's just one sentence where he mentions that the cold weather had other ideas and he has a photo of his car. So that's really creative. It doesn't take a lot of work, but it's memorable, right? Okay, so that's Mike Dawson. Second tip about hustle is do not worry about what other people are doing. I know that is so hard. We all compare ourselves to other people. I'm like comparing myself to other agents, right? So it's normal, but we just have to remind ourselves that it's never healthy. It is never useful. So you just need to focus on what is it that you get excited about? What is it that you enjoy sharing with the world? And I want to talk about Debbie because Debbie Fong is kind of the opposite of Mike Dawson. She does not like doing school visits. Debbie doesn't like public speaking at all, she has told me. And so she puts herself out there in a pretty different way. She has her own little company called Pomo Press, where she just makes things. She makes really, really cool stuff. She makes stationery, pins, prints, charms, handmade comics, patches. And she has a devoted, small but devoted following of people who really love her stuff. She does Kickstarters once or twice a year for like just incredibly cool projects that they tend to be very crafty type projects. They're not comics or graphic novels necessarily. And this is just some images pulled from her Instagram so you can see some examples of the different types of things that she sells. And then you can see that she does go to shows as a way to help people find out about the really cool products that she sells. And here are some snapshots of her stand from Anime New York City. That's actually Bailey, if you can see, at Debbie's booth there. Um, and so even though Debbie is shy, and I have never asked her, like, how do you feel about going to shows? I think she likes the fact that she's standing at her booth. She has cool stuff in front of her. People are mainly looking at her stuff instead of her like having to stand in front of a captive audience and do a presentation, which is a very different type of experience. And this is how Debbie puts herself out into the world because I'm willing to bet that there are a lot of people on this call right here who are like, I just like to make things. I wish I could just hide in my studio and just make really cool stuff. That is something that you can do. You can hide in your studio and make really cool stuff, but you need to put that cool stuff out into the world regularly somehow. And then, final piece of advice about hustle is that a small but highly connected audience is better than a huge but detached following. So, one thing I want to say about this is that um, I know that there's some, in fact, I have represented a Webtoons creator who has a huge following on Webtoons. But when their book came out, the sales were not as much as we had all hoped for, and they didn't get a lot of reviews, especially compared to some of my other clients who actually don't have nearly like a fraction of the online following of this other creator. The problem was this other creator, had kind of outsourced their whole huge following to Webtoons. And so they don't really have a direct way to communicate with their fans, which is the reason why I am such a big fan of newsletters, because if you have a newsletter, you have your fans' email addresses, right? Which gives you a way to contact them directly, to tell them you have a book coming out. So 400 people on a newsletter list, or even 100 people on a newsletter list, can actually be way more effective than hundreds of thousands of people, say, on a webcomic on Webtoons. I have seen it happen. It genuinely is true. So now I want to show you a little example of kind of circling back to the pitch that I showed at the very beginning of this presentation. Joe Latham is a UK based creator. Um, and he loves getting out to comics shows. He goes to Thought Bubble and there's a bunch of really amazing independent comics shows in the UK. He regularly exhibits at those shows. People love his work, and he just has a very close relationship with the people who see him at those shows regularly. And he does do a newsletter. This is an example of his table, but I think Joe, if you were to connect with him on his newsletter or on his Instagram, you get the sense of his personality. He just is ultra passionate about his work and about getting out and sharing wonderful things with the comics community. That really comes across. This is his Etsy, as you can see. All right. So, recapping, the three most important things that your pitch must address. It must have a story that makes people captivated. It must explain who you are and give them a pretty good sense of who you are. And it must talk about what the market for this book is and give people a really good idea of where is your book going to fit on the bookshelf, in the bookstore, or in the library. And if you want the bonus XP, somehow your pitch is going to show that you have evidence of hustle. So if you have all of those together, you have a very, very strong pitch. All right, I promised in the description of this event that I would briefly touch on how is pitching a picture book different than pitching a graphic novel. And there's actually one main big difference between them, and that is that a picture book is usually pitched with a dummy. Well, especially if it's an author illustrator. If it's just an illustrator, then it would be the full manuscript, but basically the whole thing. A dummy is, basically thumbnail sketches of the entire book, and because picture books are generally 32 pages, it is possible to put together a full dummy that an agent or editor can skim easily and get a very clear sense of how the story is gonna, what it's gonna be like when it's finally finished. So here's a quick just example of a picture book pitch from one of my clients. You can see the cover slide up at the top. It's called Apart Together. And this is a sort of a nonfiction picture book aimed at very, very young readers. And then one slide of part of the book dummy. So you can see it's just pencil sketches, but it's very legible. You can easily see the editor or agent can read through and get a very clear sense of the entire story. from that picture book pitch. If you were a writer only, your picture book pitch would have the full manuscript, not the dummy. So with a graphic novel, on the other hand, if you were to do a full dummy of a graphic novel, that could be 260 pages, and that is, don't do that. Do not do that. I mean, I have had a handful of examples of people I've represented who have done that, and it's crazy, but they did it. You do not need to do that at all. In fact, it's often a little bit to your detriment if you do that because um, you usually want, the editors usually want to be able to edit you. And sometimes if you finish an entire dummy of a graphic novel, they can get the impression that it might be harder for you to edit because you finished the whole, at least a first draft of the whole thing without any discussion first. So usually graphic novels are pitched with a detailed synopsis. It's a proposal, essentially. So you're describing the whole story in this detailed synopsis, and you are including sample pages. And I talked in the newsletter that I sent out yesterday about how much I know people agonize about how many sample pages to include in their pitch. And I'm very sorry to say that I can't really give you a solid answer on that because there is no like right number of pages to include. But I would say, generally speaking, if you are a more experienced creator who has a track record, you can get away with fewer pages of sample art because people know that you've published graphic novels before. They know that you can do it. They know what your art is like, your storytelling skills are like. So you might only need 5 to 10 pages of sample art. On the other hand, if you're a debut creator, you do need to prove more. You need to prove yourself more. So could be 20 pages, 30 pages. It's really like, how many pages do you feel are going to give the editor an extremely convincing case that you are going to be able to tell the whole story and that you're an effective visual storyteller, basically? And if you have an agent, your agent can help you with that. If you're pitching to agents, you might not need so many sample pages because usually when you get signed by an agent, you're a little bit earlier in the process. So maybe just 8 pages might be enough, something like that. And for our Pitch Fest competition, one piece of feedback that we got that we're actually changing for this year, in the past, I believe we had required that you have between 2 to 4 spreads for your pitch. And, and that would be 4 to 8 pages because one spread equals 2 pages. But we got some feedback from editors and agents on the jury that they really wanted to see a little bit more than two. Like 2 spreads was not enough for them to really get a sense of your ability. So now I believe our minimum is 3. It's uh I can't remember. We'll go look at the page and see what our actual requirement is. But the minimum is you have to have at least 3 spreads, which would be 6 pages. So that gives you a sense that people do want to see a little bit more from creators who don't have a track record yet. And with a graphic novel, you might have a partial script, but you don't necessarily need a full script because your detailed synopsis is what is telling the editor what your full story is. So here's an example from Maple Lamb's pitch. You can see I already showed you the cover image. I showed you the summary page. I showed you, I think, an example of a spread from her pitch. But then she has these outlines, each of which were about 3 pages long. And you can see each page is multiple columns. So I think, yeah, so in total, you can kind of get a sense of how detailed her detailed synopses were. So she had one detailed synopsis for book one, and then she had another detailed synopsis, right, for book two. And then she had some character art and stuff like that. Okay, so I hope all of that is clear. The final point I want to make in this presentation is how your pitch is actually a Swiss Army knife for you. Because I know it can be a pain to put together this whole pitch, but you know what? It's actually useful. It's forcing you to look at things from a publisher's point of view, which maybe in the end you are going to and ultimately self-publish your book. You never know. If you cannot end up getting a book deal with a traditional book publisher, you could do what John and Desi St. Amant did, go out and do a crowdfunding campaign. And if you have put together a pitch, you have basically put together the key elements that you need. I'm going to go come back to that one. So, like with the Kickstarter campaign that we Kids Comics Unite did with our anthology last year, you see we have this Our Story section, which is a description of what the project is. That's essentially, the short synopsis from a pitch, basically. And you just, as you can see on Kickstarter, it's like there's Our Story by the numbers. That would be the specs that you have in your pitch, sample pages, that you need that in your pitch as well. The creators, your bio, you need that in your pitch. So basically everything you're putting together for a pitch, you can just plunk that right down in a Kickstarter page to start creating a Kickstarter campaign if that's what you want to do. And then this is a self-published book that I found on Amazon, which the reason I like showing this slide is because I would like you to take a look at the number of uh, customer reviews on this page, which is outrageous and way more than a lot of traditionally published books get. But, it's a joke book and it's called Would You Rather You Edition. So obviously this creator knows kids really, really well. But they have a description of the project yet here. And if they had been pitching this book to a publisher, I don't know if they did or not originally, but maybe they did. And if they had a pitch, this is probably what was inside of their pitch or, some version of it. Okay, so we are coming to the end of this presentation. I want to talk to you briefly about Kids Comics Unite Pitch Fest that is coming up. This is our juried graphic novel pitch competition for graphic novel pitches that are aimed at kids and teens. This is our about page. I am going to um, go over to, can you guys, am I now sharing the, Bailey, can you unmute yourself and are you seeing our
Yeah, you're
website?
good. It's up.
Okay, good, good, good. All right. So if you go to the About Pitch Fest page, you can scroll down and this is going to tell you all the information you need about it. It has just like a pitch, basically, right? It has its summary right up front. And this link here to the judges page brings you to see who is on our jury. And as you'll see, there are almost an equal amount of editors and agents. And the really cool thing that we started doing last year, which we are doing again this year, is that many of these agents and editors are offering one-on-one pitch reviews on the day of our Pitch Fest celebration, which is April 25th when we announce the winners. So if you want to get a 15-minute review one-on-one on Zoom with any of these agents or editors, and have them give you direct feedback on your pitch, definitely this is an opportunity you should take a look at. And last year, these one-on-ones sold out really quickly. So when Pitch Fest opens up, you'll want to, if you do want to sign up for a review, you'll want to go there and sign up for it right away because they only have a limited number for each of those who are offering the one-on-ones. Okay, going back to our Pitch Fest page, I wanted to talk to you about what exactly is in a pitch. So what we're requiring is essentially a scaled down version of a full pitch. You're going to have a cover thumbnail image, which is a square image. You're going to have anywhere from 3 spreads, which is 6 pages of your comic, to 6 pages, or sorry, 6 spreads, which would be 12 pages. So to have minimum of 3 spreads, maximum of 6 spreads that you can upload. We do recommend that they should be sequential, meaning you don't necessarily need to start at the beginning of your story, but wherever you start, let's say you start on page 30, it should be 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, like that. And what was the other thing? Oh, and we do recommend that they should be final art. If you cannot quite manage that, just try to make as many of them be final art as possible, and maybe you have 1 spread which is still pencils. But last year or in past years, we have heard from the jury that they felt that creators who had final art were definitely at an advantage over people who were submitting some work that was just pencil sketches. Okay. Actually, let me go to the showcase from last year, and I'm gonna click on Sarah and Suk were our they created our beautiful artwork for let me see right here. You'll see our beautiful poster art. Those are the characters that they did, their own renderings of our beloved KCU characters. They did such an amazing job. And very excitingly, they got an agent and a book deal from having been third place in KCU Pitchfest last year. And so I want to show you there just quickly so you see what it is that you'll be submitting for KCU Pitchfest. So you have the creator names and then title of your project, short synopsis. We have a character maximum. I cannot remember exactly what it is. Look at the instructions. I think it might be 500 characters, but somebody can answer that in the chat. Then you have to have your age range, which would be either early reader, early middle grade, or YA. You have your genre, and then you have your page count estimate, which would be about how many pages do you think your full graphic novel is going to be. It doesn't have to be exact, but just, give your best guess at what you think the project will be. And then sample pages, just like they are showing here. Um, and then your why statement, which is about the same length as your bio. And your why statement just says, like, why are you doing this project? And then your author bio. And then finally, how to connect with you or with the creative team. So if you are the writer only, you can only submit to PitchFest if you have an artist that you are collaborating with, and it has to be a full collaboration where they are being credited for their artwork. Um, so in other words, if it's like IP work for hire where you hired an artist and you're not crediting them, you cannot submit to PitchFest. Um, so in this case, for each of you creators, you have to have your email address, obviously, and then anywhere else where people can find you. And I highly recommend that you have a website and possibly a newsletter or social media, but website at a minimum should be available for people to connect with you. Um, okay. Going back to the presentation, I just have one more thing that I wanted to let you know about, which is resources. So I created a page on the Kids Comics Unite website, kidscomicsunite.com/ pitch your graphic novel resources. And there are links in here to some of our best blog posts that are related to pitching. And there's also a downloadable PDF. And I'll show you on this slide. This is sort of like part of that checklist. Basically, I'm just summarizing what I covered in this presentation. And it's a little checklist. You can ask yourself all these questions. Am I checking all of this off with my full graphic novel pitch once it is ready? Um, Oh, one other thing I should mention that I did include on that checklist is I included on the second page, there's a checklist of the main pages that I generally see most graphic novel pitches have. So it's like your cover page, your summary page, your sample art, your detailed synopsis, your author bio, et cetera, like that. So if you just want to have that in one place, that's on that document right there. All righty. That is how to pitch your graphic novel like a pro, guys. Thank you so much. I'm guessing that there were probably some questions. I don't
I've
know.
been collecting some from the chat.
Okay, awesome.
Do you want pitching in general first or specifically Pitch Fest? Or
Um,
just whatever?
why don't we start with Pitch Fest first and then get those out of the way and then we'll do pitching in general.
Okay, so someone asked, in order to register for Pitch Fest, do I have to have everything ready to submit at the moment? Or do you have the full registration time to upload an item that may not be ready?
Okay. So there's sort of two parts to that question. All you need to have ready for Pitchfest is you need to have everything that we require. So you don't have to have fully built out this whole proposal like I was showing you of full graphic novel pitches, but you would need, that your short synopsis, you need your sample pages done, you need your author bio, you need your why statement. Um, but you don't have to have it already on the day that Pitchfest opens for registration. Pitchfest opens, Lisa, you might,
Yes, I can tell you.
okay,
It opens on the 12th
yes.
of February and submissions are due on the 27th of February.
Yeah, it's a little bit complicated. I want to talk about the 23rd versus the 12th.
Yes.
So February 12th is when it opens. And the reason we are telling you like exact time when it opens is because of those one-on-ones, and we know that those are going to sell out. So it's 11, is it 11 a.m.?
Eastern.
11 a.m. Eastern time on February 12th. Registration closes on February 23rd. So that means after February 23rd, you cannot submit to PitchFest anymore. But let's say you bought your ticket to submit to PitchFest at the last minute on February 23rd. You still have a little time. We don't actually close the submission for those of you who have bought tickets until February 27th. So you have a little extra time to finish up that pitch and then upload it onto the site.
Okay, let's see. Pitch Fest.
So to clarify though, like we don't have to have a full pitch then.
You don't have
It's
to
like
have
it's just yeah.
what I was basically this presentation was to teach you like what is it that I generally as an agent am sending out to publishers from my clients? Like how am I working together with my clients to put together a pitch that is going to wow people? And that's I want you to all know what would go into a full graphic novel proposal.
Okay. So in the potential that if something happens from Pitch Fest, then we can, go on to that next step
Hopefully
and
you're
have
working on that
good.
as you go. Yes. So that if
Yeah.
somebody reaches out, you're like, here it is. Or maybe somebody reaches out and you're like, work for really hard for a week straight and then send it to them.
Got it. Thank you.
Someone asked, can you resubmit something you've already submitted to Pitch Fest in the previous year?
I think it's okay to resubmit as long as what you're submitting is significantly revised. I wouldn't suggest that you submit the same thing that you submitted in the past, but if you have been working on it and it's, revised, then yes, it's okay.
Okay, I think those are the Pitch Fest specific questions. I don't know if anyone else wants to unmute and ask a Pitch Fest question.
Was wondering if the checklist, hi Jen, it's me.
Hi.
I was wondering if the checklist that you shared at the end, I didn't get to read through it specifically, but is it Pitch Fest specific or
No,
full
it's
pitch
in
specific?
general. It's
Okay,
general.
perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Should I move on to general
Yeah.
pitch questions?
I do see
Oh,
Cecilia uh put in the chat, so I'm confused. Can you purchase the tickets for Pitch Fest and the one-on-one the very first day, and you can upload the stuff later?
yes, correct. Yes, on the day that it opens, you can register for it. You can buy your one-on-one with a agent or editor, and you don't have to submit your pitch until it closes, until right before it closes on February 27th.
Oh, so Vinny is asking, how much are the tickets for Pitch Fest
That too, I forget.
and the one-on-ones?
How much are the tickets?
Jade knows, right, Jade? I always forget too.
Yeah.
I think it's 120, right, for submitting. Is that correct?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay, yes,
I was
$120 to submit, although we do offer a 50% discount if you are a student or you're experiencing financial hardship or for international parity. So if you live in a country that has a very different cost of living than the United States, just email us in any of those cases and we will give you the code for the 50% discount. So that's the $120 for registering to submit your work for PitchFest. So in other words, if you got the 50% discount, it would be $60. The $100 for the one-on-one is separate, and that's basically an upgrade, and there is no discount for that, unfortunately. It's just $100.
Hey, Jenna, I'm
Mhm.
Shane. I've got
Hi.
a quick question. Hey, nice to meet you. Thank you guys
Yeah.
for putting this on. Um, I thought I read that winners, if you're lucky enough to win, that along with the judges, your work would be pitched to other editors and agents. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I see how that could be a little bit confusing. What we do is, when on the day that we unveil the final gallery, it's all organized by vote count. So the top winners are at the top of the gallery, right? And then we within KCU email a gigantic email list of like every editor in the industry who acquires kids graphic novels, all the agents who work on kids graphic novels, all the art directors who work on kids graphic novels. So all of them get this email saying, "Hey, Pitchfest is ready. Now you can go look at the winners." And that is why we have been pretty successful with, the top winners often are getting agents and editors. I mean, agents and, well, I think it's m more likely to get an agent, but sometimes I believe that there was an editor who reached out to Sarah and Suk directly and was the editor that ended up acquiring their project from last year.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Do you want me to throw some more questions out, Jenna?
I guess so. Now we can switch gears to general pitching questions.
Okay, so similar to one we had for Pitch Fest, someone asked if they reworked a pitch, can they resubmit to agents and editors that they've already gotten a no from?
Usually not, I would say, because usually if an agent or editor felt like they might want to see it again, they would tell you. There's this phrase in publishing, revise and resubmit, which is basically, I see something, I like this, but there's something that's not working. Here's what I think needs to be addressed. And then if you choose to address it, you can bring it back to me. Most of the time, I would say if an editor or agent doesn't specifically say that, then they're kind of giving you a no. Usually, yeah.
How long does the submission process take on average?
Oh my gosh. Anywhere from like a week to 3 years or never. I mean, yeah, if you send a project out and for whatever reason it's hot, it's something like, it's a big name creator and the concept is fantastic and you have multiple publishers falling all over themselves to make an offer on it and there's a heated auction, the whole thing might be done in a week and you have your offer. However, that's very rare. And most of the time, it takes months and months and months, and sometimes years. It's not, I have sold projects where I originally went out on submission, you know, years beforehand. And then sometimes out of the blue, an editor will just email and say, like, "Oh, I'm finally looking at that thing you sent me a year and a half ago. It's actually, I really like it."
Okay, someone asked, how detailed should an outline be? I have a lot of world building notes and I'm concerned it's making my outline feel a bit lengthy.
Yeah, that is a really tricky question. Again, there's it's depends on the project and the type of story to some extent because if you're telling a more complicated, like epic fantasy type story, maybe your synopsis needs to be longer. If you're telling, you know, like a Mimi type story like Shauna Grant's book that I showed you, it might be a lot shorter. If your if your spidey sense is telling you that maybe your synopsis might be a little bit too long, I would pay attention to that and I would show it to people you trust. So other creators who understand the particular genre that you're working in, or maybe it's definitely worth it to hire a freelance editor. There's so many freelance editors now who are really good. And because unfortunately, so many people have been laid off from publishers and they know what publishers want. So it is definitely worth your money to pay a few $100s to a freelance editor to look at your pitch or your detailed synopsis and give you feedback on it.
Let's see. If you were an author working on a graphic novel idea, what would the submission look like? Just a script, question mark.
Yes, you could still put together a pitch. It wouldn't be as lengthy, and obviously it
Let them in the
wouldn't
backyard.
have artwork. But one thing I would say that can be helpful, you're still going to have your comp titles, right? And as you saw, I really like it when people just put covers of the comp titles because, you know, our brains read that a lot faster than reading text. If you just see the cover, like, oh, I know that book. Um, and as an author, you could definitely do that as well. And another thing you could do is you could include you could have a sort of like almost like Pinterest-like inspiration page. Like, this is the vibe that I'm going after. And I think that would be very effective. So essentially, your pitch would have your short summary page, your author bio, your comp titles, and maybe any marketing notes you might have. And then it could have like an inspiration page, and then your manuscript would be separate.
I guess this applies to Pitch Fest and to pitching normally. What should I leave with as far as sample pages? An emotional scene that shows a lot of character acting, a cool flashy action scene, a simple intro to pull people in? Question mark.
Some of you have heard me say that I used to recommend that people have include the beginning of their book, because I felt like I would want to know how the story begins, but I have since changed my tune because I've realized that you just want to grab people by the jugular however you can. So whatever scene you feel like is the most impactful. Um, I'll give you one example. I am working with one of my clients right now on a YA romance graphic novel, and the scene that she's working on is the kiss. And it is pretty uh sexy. I'll say that. It's really like, whoa, okay, great. So yeah, you want that. You definitely want something like that.
I think these are all the questions I got from the chat, but I'm sure more people have questions.
Lisa, I got a bunch
Okay, thank you.
that I pulled. Hold on. I'll kind of just look through some of these because I think some of these you got because we just did detailed outline, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on. I think some of these we already addressed. The emotional scene. Diana asked with sample art pages, do we mean all full color or full color with some pencil sketches? I think you said it's kind of situational, but should there be any sketches in
Oh,
general?
actually, I should clarify when I was saying about uh oh my gosh, sorry you guys, multiple things are coming into my head at once. Um, for Kids Comics Unite Pitch Fest, for the competition, we heard from the jury in the past that they felt that since most people submitted fully finished art for their samples, the people who didn't were at a disadvantage. So just know that if you're planning, if you don't think you can finish final art for everything, okay, like for example, let's say you could have 6 pages of fully finished sample art, or you could have 6 pages plus 2 pages of pencils. I don't know. I would use your best judgment whether you want to just go with the final art or include the pencils as well. With your actual full proposal that you would be submitting to a publisher, there are different schools of thought on this. I don't know if you guys saw that Andrea Colvin, she just started her agency. She used to be editorial director at LB Inc. And she talked about this in one of her recent newsletter articles. And she had, I think this is where I heard this. Okay, now I'm getting confused. But there was an agent out there who was saying that you shouldn't include pencils in your pitches. And I have to say, I don't give the same advice because I have sold many projects to publishers that included pencils. The key, I think, is that um, you must have finished sample art in your proposal. You could not, I would never send a proposal to publishers that's all just pencils and doesn't have any examples of final art. So I would say multiple spreads should be final art. But then beyond that, if you want to show more of the story, but you don't want to invest all the time it would take to say create 20 pages of fully rendered final sample art, you could say do, 4 spreads of final art and the rest are tight pencils. When I say tight pencils, I mean like not thumbnails. You don't want it to look messy. You want it to be pretty tightly rendered because your editor, if they're interested in acquiring the project, is going to be sharing it at an acquisitions meeting with sales and marketing team, foreign rights team, all these other people. And sometimes they don't understand as much about, they can't read thumbnails as well as an editor might be able to. And they're going to just get confused or feel like this person seems sloppy. So that's why I say, like, tight pencils are okay as long as you have multiple pages of final sample art.
Jenna, another question we have is if an agent says they only accept submissions through Query Manager, is that a bad thing for graphic novelists? It seems like QM isn't very friendly to a graphic novel pitch package. Can I answer this as I just recently went through this?
Yes.
Okay, so yes, Query Manager is extremely outdated and is not built for graphic novels, but there are ways you can work around this. So when they ask for your sample pages, a lot of times what I did instead of submitting you're gonna probably be like, I'm gonna submit like a link to my Google Drive. Some people do not want to open Google Drive links because they're worried it's gonna be a virus. So what I did instead is on my portfolio website, I had a page that specifically was just all of the art for my pitch. And it included my sample pages, my cover, all character drawings, any other explorational drawings I did. It had a quick little blurb also just about the comic again, just in case someone had stumbled upon it. But I basically had it as a portfolio page. So when I would link, because at the bottom, if you're an artist, it'll usually say like link to your portfolio or link to your samples or like your dummy. Just link that web page. And then just don't have a password behind it, just have it be completely public. And I find that that is significantly easier. And in the case for me with my agent, is that my agent ended up clicking that page and then immediately just went to the rest of my website. So it is kind of like a really easy way to get them, if someone's interested in your art, it's a really fast way to also get them to look at the rest of your portfolio, because they'll just end up clicking more links if they're interested in you. But that is the best way you can get around it because I'm going to tell you right now, you can't upload files on Query Manager, but the upload quality is really, really bad, and they do not accept very big files. So I you could upload files, and maybe if you have a more like simple style, they would look okay. But in my instance, I had a pitch I was making where everything was halftone. So if it got too crunched, everything looked crazy. So I would recommend having a portfolio page essentially on your website for your pitch and using that to link everything. Um, it's
Oh, Edna's
rough. I
raising her
wish they would
hand.
update Query Manager to be better for just visual books in general, but we gotta do what we gotta do.
Edna?
Hi, that's really good. Thank you. Just a quick question is like, do you like do password protection for your website? Because not everybody, I don't think I would want everybody to see my pitch without like my permission or whatever.
So I do not have my website password protected, but my page that is for my
That's
pitch
what
or
I
like
meant,
for
the
my
page.
book,
Yeah.
not I don't have it password protected because the other
Uh-huh.
thing too is like you kind of have to think about this is just me, and I'm thinking about the other person. If I was receiving this and then I saw it was a password, I'm probably just going to close the page because I'm not going to want to hunt
Okay.
for the password on like the query letter or
But if
um
you like create like a URL that's just really particular for that, and nobody else
oh
will
yeah, yeah.
know
No, no,
about it.
it's
Okay,
literally
that
the
makes
title of
sense.
my book.
Cool. Thank you.
And then it just has like all the art. So they can just basically go to there and then link to the rest of your website. It's
That's
just one
great.
of those
Yeah.
like I kept it public on my website. Like it's you can literally just pick it up right now and it's like in a portfolio page because like I kind of wanted it public, but you could just make it an unlisted site just with that URL.
Like a private. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
like an
great. I think I'm
unlisted
impressed.
page.
Okay,
Um,
thank you.
but I wouldn't put a password on it just because
Okay.
I've also read from a lot of people all across like editors and art directors that they're like, if I get a password, I'm closing the tab.
Okay. Thank you.
I think there's still maybe a little confusion about the submission window for Pitch
Okay.
Fest. So just to clarify, you can buy your ticket anytime from the 12th to the 23rd, but you don't have to submit right away. You just have to submit by the deadline. So if you want to get your one-on-one, it's best to buy your ticket early, and then as long as you submit by the deadline, you're good. So hopefully that clarifies it.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa.
Oh, and then someone else asked about the format for submitting. I assume that was to Pitch Fest. Is it a Google Doc? Do we need one document with everything or separate documents? For PitchFest, it's a form. You'll not a Google Doc, but it is a submission form on our website. So some of it will be text boxes for like your bio and your why, and then you can upload the spreads. Each spread is separate, a separate upload. Did you have more questions, Bailey, that you captured?
Oh shoot, hold on. I also thought this was pretty interesting. Is it okay to be out on submission for more than one project at a time?
Um, I think so. Out on submission to agents, I'm guessing. Yeah, I think that would be fine. I guess I'm wondering like if you mean submitting multiple projects to the same agent. I don't think that's what you mean. I'm not sure.
That was me.
Oh, okay.
That was me. I was just wondering because I'm out on submission for something right now with an agent, but Pitchbook Pitch Fest looks so great. I'm like I wonder if I could put something together for that. That's just separate or
I think so. And even if that agent that you submitted to was interested in working with you, I think most agents would be happy if you post something on PitchFest because it just gets more eyes on your work. And we're with this competition, we're trying so hard to make it very niche. It's very targeted towards like the kids graphic novel world. So I mean, I know if one of my clients, and this has happened in the past, said, like, is it okay if I submit something on PitchFest? I'm like, yes, please. Go ahead.
all right, thanks.
Another one I have, Jana, is outside of Pitch Fest, can you pay for a one-on-one with KCU staff for notes if you're going to crowdfund it? Well, Jana, you offer consultations.
I do. Yeah, if you go to my literary agency website, janaco.co, there's a button that says book a consult. So you can do that. And another little tidbit of information I can give you guys is that Andrea Colvin is going to be doing a really cool interview with me um, February 18th. So right in the middle of our Pitch Fest open window, which is going to be about what happens behind closed doors at an acquisition meeting at a publishing company, which is going to be really fun. I'm so excited about that. And Andrea is also opening up to consultation calls like I do, and we're going to have her information available by then. But just so you know, she's another person you could book a call with.
Another one I see is Jake asked if there's any thoughts on pitching an adaptation for an already published classic.
Oh, I think that's a wise decision. We've been talking internally a lot about adaptations, and yes, I think publishers, the market we're in right now is really tough. And of course, they want sure things, right? And nothing really is a sure thing, but the closest thing they have to a sure thing is a book that is an established bestseller or has been around for, decades as a classic. And so it is definitely fine for you to pitch an adaptation of an existing book if you go to that publisher that has the rights to that book. Um, if you already have an agent, you could talk to your agent about it and ask them. I'm guessing again that they would say like, yeah, great idea. Go ahead, do it.
Margaret asked for Pitch Fest. For Pitch Fest, if our pages have an uneven count for spreads, how should we handle that? Also, should pitches always be in two-page spreads? I've always been told it makes it to make it as easy to view on mobile as possible.
Um, okay, I have thoughts about this. Part of the reason why we include spreads is because page turns are so important in graphic novels. And I think that I prefer when creators design pitches landscape format so that you can show the spread and that way you see and you know where the page turn is happening. That doesn't always happen, but that's my personal preference, and that is the way we designed um, that is the way we designed the Pitch Fest submission. So if you're Jade, what do you think? Like if you're the
Yeah.
sample you want to start like if it starts on a right-hand page.
Oh,
You can
Jana,
leave
this
it blank.
I did that with mine last year.
Mhm.
Because what I did is I basically made like a filler page. So
Mm,
like if any of you guys are manga readers, you know how they always have like the decorative like filler page where there's like a little drawing or there's like a pattern. Just make like an end paper. And then just start where you want to start. That's what I personally did because where I wanted to start, I realized in my script it was functionally not going to have the correct page turn if I started on it even, but I also like it was the start of a new chapter, so I had to like start it where it was. So
mhm,
you could just make like a filler end paper, and plus you could just put a little cute little drawing over there. Like,
Yeah,
you can make it work.
totally Bailey. Yeah, Bailey's idea is fantastic. I would also say though, if you're crunching on time and you're just like, I just kind of gotta leave it blank, that's okay. But
mhm,
just make sure, yeah, as much finished work as possible. And the DPI, one thing I will say, oh gosh, please make sure it's legible because it will crunch once you because you're looking at the document like at like a 300 DPI and we're asking people to basically crunch it down to like 72 uh or a little higher, can go up to like 120, but just make sure that you can read it. It's legible, the lettering and all the font is okay. That's like one of the biggest things that I would have to go back because the whole team, we go through all your pitches. We read them. We I manually will go and email you and be like, hey, we can't read this. Please fix it. So yeah, just one other big tip when you're exporting. But yes, back to
right.
the main question. One blank page at the beginning or end is totally cool.
Mhm.
I also have our publisher's more resistant to sign on a pitch for a story that is a multi-book series.
Um, if you're a debut creator, I would say yes, because they have no idea how your book is going to do. And if you're pitching something that's 3 or 4 volumes and it's like a continuing story, that's actually a point against you because um they don't want to be on the hook to have to publish something if it's really like not selling. That's why they would rather start with something that's a single volume. Maybe with the potential. Like you can definitely, that's what I would recommend. And I've done this many, many times with creators that I work with. You pitch a single book, but you say, here is how the book could be continued in a series. And then you have like short synopses of potential future books. Bailey, are you
So
looking?
here I have one for you.
Oh,
Someone
okay.
asked about how to estimate page count if you're not done yet.
Mm, Hmm. How, Jade and Bailey, do you have any thoughts on how to estimate page count when you're not re
What I did for my estimate was like I was like give or take my chapters are probably going to be 20 pages long.
hmm
So I kind of figured out this was my math, but I
hmm
also think my page estimate is still too high and I'm probably going to bump mine down is 20 pages per chapter, and then you can kind of shave depending on how many plot points there are. But like for example, I think my book that's about to go on sub, I think is like 12 chapters. So it's like no, because I said the estimate was like maybe it's like 18. It's closer to like 300 pages.
hmm
And I think I had it as an estimate of 330 just by the 20 page count, but I think it's actually probably going to be closer to 300. I need to like go back and look through it again. But I kind of just assume like 20 pages is probably like a chapter amount. I actually got it from the Maple Lamb did a really good talk with us that was about pitching, and she had like a outline structure guide that was essentially like divide each chapter into 20 pages and then 5 pages for each plot point in that chapter. And
hmm
then I would just kind of give or take from there. So like my book is hypothetically like 330 pages, but it's probably actually less than that because some of my plot points are just a page.
Yeah, Shauna and Maple are both like really structured in the way that they create their stories. And it's so cool to me. Yeah, how they break it up in a very methodical way. Just exactly the way that you described, Bailey. The other thing I would suggest is that that it can be a red flag in a submission if the page count that you're suggesting for your project is way out of whack from what's typical in the age level. So you definitely want to look at books like this is again where comp titles are really important. Like if you're pitching an early reader and you say that the book is 200 pages, people would be raising eyebrows, like that doesn't seem right. Or conversely, let's say it's an upper middle grade and you say it's 80 pages. Again, that's not going to work. It's not the way, not standard page count. So comp titles also can help you with that. I would say it's a combination between like Bailey, what Bailey said, working it out from your story, but also making sure that it fits the norms of what's in the age level and genre that you're working in.
I'll also say too, the first time I did Pitch Fest, they were like, "Your book is way too long." And then this year, people were like, even when I brought it to my agent, he was like, "Yeah, 300's fine for this." And I was like, "Really?" And he was like, "Yeah, I think it's fine." Like, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes it depends on your story, but I think if you kind of like try to like block it together, you can get like a general gist.
Did we get through all the questions?
I think we got most of them. If anyone has any last questions, you can unmute.
I have a question about the evidence of hustle section. Um, I do lots of cons, and I'm successful at them. I have plenty of other published graphic novels out there, and I'm good at my cons. And I take lots. Of course, we take lots of pictures, and and the fans and all that. So, would you recommend posting just a few fun pictures in the evidence of hustle
hmm
uh, section of the pitch? And do you think it would be too much to kind of mention? And I'm really good at it. You know, I'm profitable.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, here's what I would say. 100% yes, having a slide that's just like, I regularly attend cons and then like photos of yourself at the cons in various circumstances.
I table at cons.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so it's
Yeah.
pictures of your table,
Hmm.
etc. And then mentioning that I am profitable. I think, that saying I'm good at it in general, I lean towards not using phrasing like that. It's sort of like in synopses of books. I do not like it when creators say like this story is going to blow your socks off or something like, readers are going to fall in love. That's irrelevant. Like you need to tell the story and convince the person reading it, the agent or the editor, they need to have their socks blown off without being told that they will have their socks blown off, if that makes sense. Um, so similarly, I think with saying I'm good at it, I think there's ways it would be much more effective if you conveyed that through some like quantitative information, like I attend X number of shows, I am profitable with sales, uh, I've appeared on X number of panels, like anything like that. Then you're telling the story without like explicitly saying it. And that's extremely effective.
Great. Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you. This has all been very helpful and informative. So thank you all.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for coming.
We
All
do
right.
have a Pitch Fest space in Mighty Network. So if you guys want to continue the conversation, and also in there's a link to the Maple Lamb workshop replay if anyone wants to watch that.
Ah, awesome. Yes. And then one other favor I would love to ask from all of you guys. If you could share in any groups you belong to or online or anything about Pitch Fest, we really want to get the word out about this competition and make our jury excited to look at really amazing work. So that would help us a lot. Thank you so much. All right, everybody, go off and have a really nice weekend. Thank you all for spending so much time together.
Bye, everyone.
Right.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thank you for
Bye.
Thank you.
coming.